Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you're joining us today at Inkolo Mahadum Wisdom University. Today's date is Eke Market Day in the Igbo lunar calendar and 11/25, 2025 in the Roman Catholic calendar. Remember, at Inkolo Mahadum, we always advise you to use your naturally given common sense, which we call Akonuche in Igbo language. And we always encourage you to see things from how it concerns you, not how it concerns other cultures. Because we at Inkolom Academy, we package and present our lectures from the Igbo man, from Biafran and African perspective. And Inkolom Academy Wisdom University is an university. We are not content creators. Before we present any lecture, we do our research. So we also encourage you to do your own research in order to agree with us that we are right. And we are live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, and we are live on TikTok. And we encourage you to like, comment, and share this lecture to everybody. The title of this lecture is Religious Wars and the Fulani Religious Wars going on in Nigeria and why it cannot stop. Religious wars and Fulani, the current Fulani religious war going on in Nigeria and why it cannot stop. And we will begin this lecture by defining what religious war means. According to Wikipedia, a religious war or a war of religion, sometimes known as a holy war, is also called in Latin sanctum bellum. The Latin word for holy or religious war is sanctum bellum. It's a war and conflict which is primarily caused or justified by differences in religion and beliefs. But according to the definition by Nkolomahadum, because we at Nkolomahadum also have our own definition. We define religious war from Nkolomahadum Wisdom University as a war driven by religious ideology and their sponsors that never ends. That's the definition from Nkolomahadum Wisdom University. And we will go back in history to give you information about various religious wars that have reshaped the world. And we picked up these religious wars from, according to back in time, there are forgotten religious wars that shaped the world. There are 14 of them, 14 religious wars that shaped the world that we live in today, before we get to the Fulani wars that is going on in Nigeria. The first one is one they call the Albigensian Crusade. The Albigensian Crusade from 1209 to 1229. So it lasted for almost 20 years. It was a brutal Catholic campaign against the Cathar heretics in southern France. This one is from the Catholic Church, and the Catholic campaign against the Cathar heretics in southern France. The Cathars, a unique Christian sect, posed a theological challenge to the Catholic Church, leading to this violent crusade. This war sought to eliminate the Cathar belief system, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. The conflict profoundly changed the religion, embedding Catholic orthodoxy and diminishing the diversity of religious thought. So this Iberian crusade of the Catholic Church embedded the Catholic orthodoxy. That is, this one make the Catholic Church to be domineering, to be dominant in that area, and diminished diversity. So this is the Albigensian crusade of 1209 and 1229. Now, the second war is the Hussite War. The Hussite War. The Hussite Wars occurring between 1419 to 1434, that's almost 20 years again, were pivotal in European religious history. These wars saw Bohemian followers of Jan Hus, a reformer, challenging the political and religious authority of the Holy Roman Empire. So this Hussite wars, the Bohemians were challenging the political and religious authority of the Holy Roman Empire, that's the Catholic Church. And the conflict arose after Hus' execution. They executed Hus, the leader of the Bohemian Church. And then the execution of Hus with his followers seeking to reform the church practices. So the Bohemians were trying to reform the church promises, and they were challenging the Catholic Church. And their leader, Jan Hus, who is a reformer, trying to reform the system, was killed. And that resulted to the war that happened, that is called the Hussite Wars. This tells you that at Inkola Muhammad, we do our side. We don't just come up and deliver. So follow us line by line so that we can see forgotten religious wars that actually shape the world that we live in. All this type of lecture, you cannot get it anywhere except at Inkola Muhammad. The next war is the Charmatic, the Charmatic war. The, the Sky or the Macadic War from 1546 to 1547 was a short yet pivotal conflict between the Holy Roman Empire, Holy Roman Emperor, and a Protestant alliance of German princes. Again, this war again involving the Roman Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Emperor, and a Protestant, that's the Anglican version, and the Anglican version is called the Protestants, alliance of German princes. This war was a significant episode in the Protestant Reformation, highlighting the religious and political tensions of the time. Though the Macadic War was a short but vital because it happened between 1546 and 1547, almost 1 year. Was a war between the Holy Roman Emperor and the Protestant alliance of German princes. This was happening in Germany. The fourth war was the French Wars of Religion. The French Wars of Religion spanning from 1562 to 1598 were a series of 8 bloody conflicts between the Catholics and the Huguenots that tore France apart. Again, this French war of religion is also involving the Catholic Church and the Huguenots that tore French apart. These wars were not only religious but also political, involving noble families vying for power. The Edict of Nantes eventually granted limited religious freedom to Huguenots, though tensions persisted. What we are learning from this war between this war that happened in France was a series of eight bloody conflicts, eight different conflicts that happened between the Catholic Church and the Huguenots. Eventually, they have an agreement called the Edict of Nantes, which eventually granted limited religious freedom to the Huguenots, though tension persisted because at that time, whatever the Roman Empire says goes. Whatever the Catholic Church says goes. Nobody dares to challenge them. They are the ones that are controlling the world with their religion. The fifth one is the Dutch revolt. The Dutch revolt, lasting from 1568 to 1648, was a prolonged struggle for independence from the Catholic Spain. Spain was a Catholic country ruling Dutch, the Dutch that you know it today. And then the Dutch revolted from 1568 to 1648. It was a long battle driven by Protestant resistance. The Dutch is a Protestant country. It's an Anglican country trying to get freedom from Catholic Spain. This revolt was a key moment in the 80 Years' War. The war lasted for 80 years. The war for Dutch to become independence. This Netherlands you hear today, the Dutch is the Netherlands. They fought 80 years war with the Catholic Spain being supported by Britain, by the Protestant Britain, Anglican Church. And marking the rise of the Dutch Republic. Eventually, religious and economic factors intertwined with Protestantism, offering a rallying point against Spanish rule. So, as you can tell, these are religious wars. This one lasted for 80 years before Dutch Netherlands became independent. The 61 is the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648 stands as one of Europe's deadliest conflicts, deeply rooted in Protestant-Catholic tensions within the Holy Roman Empire. At that time, the Roman Empire was the one that was in charge of Europe, and everybody was trying to get that from them. And then this war, this 30 years old war, became countries that are with the Protestants and the countries that are Catholic Church. They fought a 30 years war because those from the Protestants are trying to get away from the rules and subjugations from the Catholic Church. This war involved multiple European powers, affecting millions across the continent. However, the Peace of Westphalia ended the conflict, reshaping the political and religious map of Europe. It marked a shift towards state sovereignty over religious hegemony, religious hegemony of the Catholic Church at that time. marks the freedom of the countries to practice the religion they want to practice. Because before that time, it was whatever the Roman Empire or emperor says is what goes in Europe. This is an important lecture for you to know that religious wars, it never ends. It never ends unless it goes fighting, they started to lay down their arms by themselves. It never ends. Now, the seventh war, the seventh religious war that can never be forgotten in history is the War of the Three Kingdoms. The War of the Three Kingdoms from 1639 to 1651 encompassed a series of interconnected conflicts across England, Scotland, and Ireland, including the English Civil War. These wars were driven by a mix of religious, political, and social factors. In Charles I attempted to impose religious uniformity, ignited resistance. That is in England, what you call United Kingdom. The King Charles I attempted to impose the same religious uniformity across the land and was confronted with resistance. There were uniform resistance against that attempt to impose one one form of religion on everybody, leading to civil war and the execution of Charles I. You see what religion can do? That is why you have to know that religious wars are the most dangerous wars in the world and never ends. The next war that is important is the Taiping Rebellion. The Taiping Rebellion occurred between 1850 to 1864. That is almost 14 years in China. This one was in China, where a Christian-inspired uprising led by Hong Jingquan, who claimed he was a brother of Jesus, led to one of the world's most deadliest conflicts, costing about 20 million lives. 20 million lives were lost in that war. The ninth one is the Mahadist War. The Mahadist War between 1881 and 1899, almost 20 years in Sudan, was a significant Islamic revolt against British Egyptian rule. It was led by Muhammad Ahmad, who proclaimed himself the Mahdi, a messianic, like a messiah figure in Islamic eschatology. His movement sought to purify Islam and establish religious authority, rallying Sudanese tribes against colonial power. Now, this war in Sudan used religion, another form of religion. He said he wanted to purify the religion to confront the colonial masters, to fight against the colonial masters. The next one is the Maccabean Revolt. The Maccabean Revolt from 167 to 160 BCE was a Jewish uprising against Greek Seleucid rulers who sought to Hellenize Judea. So the Greeks want to Hellenize Judea, and the Jewish refused and revolted. This revolt was sparked by religious persecution and the desecration of the Jewish temple. You see, the Jews were practicing their own form of religion, but the Greeks want to impose their Hellenized form of religion on them, and they revolted, and it led to the war of the Maccabean revolt. The next war, the 11th one, is the Byzantine iconoclasm. The Byzantine iconoclasm wars. You see why Nkolamo had Wisdom University? It's an university. What you will learn from this university, you cannot learn anywhere. We are not content creators. We do our research and present them to you. And so the Byzantine iconoclasm wars between 726 to 843 were a series of internal conflicts within the Byzantine Empire over the use of religious images and icons. You know that the Byzantine Empire is the current Turkey. There was a time the Byzantine Empire was ruling all the whole of Arab land. You know, it was the First World War that the Byzantine Empire were defeated by the Europeans, by the Allied forces. But before the First World War, it was the Byzantine Empire that was ruling all over Arabs, both Saudi Arabia, both Syria, both Iran, both Iraq, both Palestine, all those areas is being ruled by the Byzantine Empire. But they had a conflict over the use of religious images and icons. That was why they had that war. That's why they had that war, the Byzantine iconoclasm wars. You see what religion can do? You see how religious belief can make you go to war. And that is why the Fulani wars in Nigeria can never stop. We will get there. Now, the 12th one is the first and second fitna, the one they call the first and second fitna. The first and second fitna occurred between 656 to 661, maybe a space of 5 years. And the second one, the second fitna, occurs between 680 to 692, about 12 years. These were early Islamic civil wars that profoundly influenced Islamic history. These conflicts arose from disputes over the rightful leadership of the Muslim community after Prophet Muhammad's death. So when Muhammad died, people were fighting for who is going to take over. Why are you fighting over who is going to take over if religion is actually, a thing ordained by nature? Nature, who ordained it, if it was ordained by nature, will naturally bring out somebody else. But no, they were fighting who is going to take over from Muhammad after he died. And then the first fitna involved the assassination of Caliph Uthman and the rise of Ali. And the second fitna further deepened divisions, especially between Sunni and Shia factions. And that's why we have Sunni and Shia factions in the Islam religion today, because of this conflict here. Because when Muhammad died, they were fighting as to who is going to take control of the church, of that religion. That's how the Sunni and Shia factions emerged in the Muslim religion. The next unforgotten wars is the Sikh Wars. The Sikh Wars between 1845 and 1849 between the British and Sikh people in India. You know that the British conquered India. During that war, it was a religious war because the Sikh, they practice Hindu. They believe in Hindu, while the British was coming with their Christianity. And so they clashed. And even though the Sikhs were defeated in that war, but it was one of the wars that changed the world. That is why it is important that you participate in this lecture and have this information. And the last war, the 14th one, was the Cristero War. The Cristero War between 1926 and 1929 was a Catholic revolt against the Mexican government's anti-religious laws. The Mexican government started to make anti-religious laws, and then the Catholic church members, the Catholic religion, revolted against the Mexican government. That's led to this, the Cristero War of 1926 to 1929. So you see how the world is? In Europe, where the Catholic Church was domineering everybody during the Roman Empire, and Roman Emperor was the one that is making everybody follow their way, their Catholic way. And others were resisting them. But in Mexico, they are the one that felt that they are being angered, and then they revolted. You see how the world is? So this ends the 14 important wars, important religious wars that shaped the world that we live in today. A lot of our African people don't know that the Catholic Church and the Protestants, they fought many wars for many, many years. Like we presented here, some of the wars lasted for 80 years. Another one, the 30 years war between the Christians, the countries being ruled by Catholic and the Protestants, the one lasted for 30 years was the most deadliest. I think more than 20 million people died in that war. So you can see how people will die because of a religious war. And that now brings us down now to the Fulani religious war going on in Nigeria. Just like, if you don't know, the Fulani the Arabs started to come to Africa in the 7th century. In the 7th century, before 7th century, there was no Fulani, there was no Arab in Africa. And since they have been coming, they've been coming with wars and taking the lands and resources of our people. It didn't start today. And so, but the war in Nigeria, all we can recall is from the Usman Dan Fodio conquering Hausa people, with war. And then recently, in 2014, 2015, when the APC government wanted to take over government from Jonathan, when they imported mercenaries from African countries, when they imported mercenaries from Mali, Niger, Senegal, and other places to help them to win the election. That was when the current clear war started. That's when it started. And for those who don't know, the Fulani terrorists that you are looking at today in Nigeria are Fulani militia. They are Fulani military. They are military wing of the Muslims. Those are the people you are calling terrorists or calling them bandits or calling them different names, but they are military. They are well trained in Arabic. That somebody doesn't speak English doesn't mean that he's not trained. They are very, very well trained. And they are fighting with one objective: to set up a Fulani caliphate in Nigeria. All of them. And it will interest you to note that according to Intersociety, published by Metro Star Nigeria of August 13, 2025, that of all these terrorist groups that you see in Nigeria, there are up to 22 Islamist terrorist groups in Nigeria, according to inter-society. That's about 22 Islamic groups fighting to establish Fulani Islamic Caliphate in Nigeria. And they have killed up to 185,000 people for the past 16 years, according to Inter-Society. And so, some of the ones that we know, we call them Boko Haram, ISWAP, ISIS, Miyetti Allah, Ansaru, Islamic Movement of Nigeria, to mention a few. That is the few that we know. The Lakurawa and others that just came out. So total is about 22 of them fighting to establish an Islamic State in Nigeria. That's what they're fighting for. So for those who are saying you don't know what they're fighting for, this is what they're fighting for. That's why you need to be joining us at the Colomahad. That's why you need to subscribe so that I can be getting the correct information. Because here we research and then we present to you. And so this Fulani jihad has been going on now across almost all the states in Nigeria, namely in Borno, in Yobe, in Kebbi, in Sokoto, in Katsina, in Kwara, in Ogun, in Ekiti, in Enugu, in Ebonyi, in Kano, in Adamawa, in Ondo, in Oyo, in Osun, Delta, Imo, Abia, Anambra, Edo, Abuja, Niger, Zamfara, Kaduna, Plateau, Benue, Taraba, and Kogi. The states mentioned here is up to 27 or more states in Nigeria. How many states do we have in Nigeria then? How many states? So out of the 36 states you have in Nigeria, almost 28 or 29 are always being attacked by this Fulani military militia. That's what has been going on. And in addition to kidnapping, they kill, they exploit the natural resources, and they steal. They also cattle. And so this is their intention. There's no day you wake up that you will not hear that they have killed here or kidnapped here or done this here or done that here. And the whole world is wondering what is going on. The Sokoto Caliphate is there, not doing much. The Tinubu government is there, not doing much. And some school of thought is saying that because Tinubu is a beneficiary of these mercenaries, because they were brought in when Muhammad Buhari was about to get in power, and all of them are in alliance. So he must have known that this plan is on, that he doesn't want to, offend these terrorists, that he is benefiting from their services, or he has benefited from their services. And that is why the government is not doing much to stop them, because they can easily be stopped if the government wants to, because they ride on bikes, both in the afternoon. They go in groups. Why can't you be able to identify them? That is the question. And so we are saying that another reason why the Fulani fighters are not being, Islamic fighters are not being stopped is because every Muslim may be comfortable in an Islamic state, no matter how bad it is, because they're already Muslims already. That could be the reason. If not, why can't everybody stand up to stop this Fulani Islamic militia trying to establish an Islamic state in Nigeria? That's the question. That's the question. And so that's why we have concluded at Colombo Wisdom University that this Fulani religious war going on in Nigeria cannot stop. It cannot stop until they achieve their objective. It cannot stop until they achieve the objective. It cannot stop because the military cannot stop them. The military is not getting information about their operations, and they are determined. They come with different type of weapons, and why they have their Quran. They don't come with the Quran. They don't come with prayer. They come with different sophisticated weapons. And then the Christians that they are killing, their leaders is telling them to go and pray. And then some of the leaders are not even talking, are not even speaking. That is another reason why these Fulani Islamic fighters cannot be stopped in Nigeria. It cannot be stopped. For your information, it cannot be stopped. The only thing that can stop them is by President Trump coming in. If President Trump doesn't come in, we don't think at Nkola Mahadum that Tinubu will have the will to stop them. Tinubu may have the resources to stop them. He may not have the will because he may be a beneficiary or he has benefited from the mercenaries' invitation by Buhari because they are all in the same alliance. They are all in the same party. That's what we are saying. And so this lecture is very important. We want you to know that Nkola Mahadum Wisdom University is an university. We are not content creators. Before we present any lecture to you, we must have done some research. Before we come to present any lecture to you is supported with research, just like we have done so now to let you know that religious wars and the Fulani wars in Nigeria cannot stop. And we started by enumerating many wars, many religious wars that have reshaped the world that we live in. And we define religious war as a war and conflict, which is primarily caused and justified by differences in religion and beliefs, according to Wikipedia. And also, Nkola Mahadum also defined religious war as a war driven by religious ideology and their sponsors that never ends. And then we went back in time to educate you on the 14 religious wars that have reshaped the world that we live in. And the first one we mentioned is the Albigensian Crusade of 1209 to 1229. And we encourage you to do your own research. Do your own research to either prove us wrong or support our lecture. And then the second one is the Hussite Wars. The Hussite Wars occurring between 1419 and 1434. All these are religious wars. The third one is the Maccadic War between 1546 and 1547. And then the fourth one is the French Wars of Religion. French Wars of Religion between 1562 and 1598. And the fifth one is the Dutch Revolt. The Dutch Revolt, which occurred between 1568 and 1648. The 80 Years War that led to the independence of the Dutch, the Netherlands. And then the 30 Years War between 1618 and 1648. This war is between the countries being ruled by Catholic Church and Protestant Church. The countries fought together for another 30 years. They fought for 30 years. And after that, that led to the Peace of Westphalia. Peace of Westphalia means religious tolerance. It forced the Catholic Church to allow other countries to practice the religion that they want to practice. If not, before that time, the Catholic Church, whatever the Catholic Church says, that was goes. You must do it, follow them by force. But this war changed the whole thing. The seventh one was the War of the Three Kingdoms the War of the Three Kingdoms from 1639 to 1651 in England, where the King Charles wanted to impose, uniform religion, and it was resisted. And the eighth one is the Taipei Rebellion in China. Hong Xingquan, who claimed he was a brother of Jesus, was one of the deadliest conflicts, and about 20 million people were killed. The ninth one is the Mahdist War, 1881 to 1899 in Sudan, where this guy, Muhammad Ahmad, got his Muslim followers in a purified Islam to fight against the British and the Egyptian colonizers. And the 10th one is the Maccabean Revolt. The Maccabean Revolt from 167 to 160 BC was a Jewish uprising against the Greek Seleucid, where the Greek wanted to they want to Hellenize Judea, and the Jewish people revolted. And the 11th one is the Byzantine iconoclasm. The Byzantine iconoclasm was an internal conflict within the Byzantine Empire over the use of religious images and icons. This one is interesting. Over the use of religious images and icons, which image shall we use? Which icon shall we use? It led to the war that they call the Byzantine iconoclasm. And the 12th one was the first and second fitna. The first and second fitna redefined the Muslim religion, whereby the first fitna, which occurred between 656 to 661 BCE, was when Muhammad died. They were trying to find a successor, and that led to the assassination of Caliph Ottoman, and then the rise of Ali. And then the second fitna from 680 to 692 also deepened division, especially between the Sunni and Shia factions. So this particular religious fight led to the division of the Muslim religion into Shia and the Sunni factions. And then the 13th one is the Sikh Wars, the Sikh War between India and Britain. The Sikh, you know that in India, they practice Hindu, and the Sikh people are the Indian people practicing Hindus, fighting with the British Christianity. Eventually, Britain won them in that war, but it also reshaped the world that we lived in. The last one is the Historia War, 1926 to 1929, a Catholic revolt against Mexican government anti-religious laws. These are just to let you know about many religious wars that have been fought for, and how many people that were killed and for how long. And then we transpose that to the Fulani war going on now in Nigeria. For those who don't know what is going on in Nigeria, it's really war going on, where the government is masking it, is closing it, is not letting you know, but the whole world knows what is going on. And we also let you know that before the 7th century, there was no Arab in Africa. The Arabs started to come to Africa from the 7th century because they fight a lot. When they were fighting, refugees were coming to Africa. From there, they've been fighting Africans, taking their land, and now they control so many governments in Africa. That's what they've been doing. But today, the one that is going on in Nigeria was the one brought in by APC in 2014, 2013, 2014, 2015, in order to help them to get rid of President Jonathan. And they call him mercenaries. They call him Fulani mercenaries from across Africa to come to Nigeria and help them to remove Jonathan. Eventually, they succeeded in removing Jonathan, and now they refuse to go back because they were abandoned. So since then, these Fulani militia fighters, because if you don't know, you're calling them bandits, you're calling them terrorists, you're calling them whatever, but these are trained military people. These Fulani bandits or terrorists or whatever you call them, they are Fulani militia. They are Fulani military. They are well trained, and they are fighting to establish Islamic Caliphate in Nigeria. And according to Intersociety, published by Metro Star Nigeria of August 13, 2025, Islamic groups, you have 22 Islamic groups in Nigeria, and they have killed 185,000 people in over the past 16 years. 22 Islamic groups. We just know some of them that comes to mind, like the Boko Haram, ISWAP, ISIS, Miyetti Allah, Ansaru, Islamic Movement of Nigeria, to mention a few. Wolo Wolo, Lakurawa. There's a lot of them. There are 22 of them, you know. And so since that time, they've been on rampage all over Nigeria. So they've been killing people, kidnapping, and exploiting the natural resources, extracting and exploiting natural resources in Boronu, in Yobe, in Kebbi, in Sokoto, in Katsina, in Zamfara, in Kaduna, in Plateau, Benue, Taraba, Kogi, in Kwara, Ogun, Ekiti, Enugu, Ebonyi, Kano, Adamawa, Ondo, Oyo, Osun, Delta, Imo, Abia, Anambra, Edo, Abuja, Niger, to mention a few. They're almost all over the place, kidnapping, killing, and raping our people, you know? And so the caliphate is there not doing much. Tinubu is there not doing much. And the Christian leaders are compromised. Some of them are saying there's no genocide. Some of them don't care. Some of them tell their followers to go and pray, while the Fulani military, militia, are killing them with sophisticated weapons. How can you use prayer to fight sophisticated weapons? That is the problem. That's why it cannot stop, because they're having their way. Nobody is seriously stopping them. So if it's you, are you going to stop? Since they're successful in what they're doing, do you think that they will stop? The answer is no. That's why it cannot stop. The only thing that can stop them is the arrival of a power like United States power, Donald Trump, coming in. That's the only way that this Fulani wars can be stopped in Nigeria. And with this, we shall be bringing this lecture. And please like, share, comment, and also join us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok. Go back to our previous lectures, and you will not regret that you did. And with this, we shall be bringing today's lecture. And thank you very much for joining us. And please share, like, and comment. Thank you, and have a good one. Bye-bye.